take 500 tests, also add D-ball on top because you got to kickstart your cycle, of course. That was probably like the only time I've ever had noticeable almost gyno develop.
Birth control is like a nandrolone.
Yeah, there's a ton of different progestins that are used in birth control, but many of them derive from nandrolone as like the parent, and they will just like tweak and manipulate it.
We just put girls on it. Like, that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
For decades.
Yeah. Take whatever the doctor suggests, obviously.
Do you know much about this UFC thing with USADA?
They would show up in the middle of the night when they're sleeping, almost to the point of it being nearly unjustifiable ethically, I suppose.
Weightlifting, as an Olympic sport, what these systems were doing was they weren't even allowing a natural puberty to happen. Mm-hmm. They were hopping on as puberty was occurring.
That is your puberty.
When people are like, oh, Sam Sulek is too young to start. Like, these countries, they're like, oh, that's cute. You think 20 years old is too young?
Yeah.
Girls, 12 years old. Boys, 12 to 15. Steroids.
And are chummy with many of the top people.
No one in CrossFit talks about steroid use. Creators, coaches, athletes, sponsors, none of them. Mm-hmm.
I've used Marek Health for over a year to get the most comprehensive blood panel on the market. After sample collection at one of the many LabCorp locations, a specialist will give you a very robust breakdown of your lab results. Then they use a 3-step process to help you out. They suggest direct lifestyle changes that can positively affect your results. Then they suggest and provide over-the-counter supplements and vitamins. And then finally, they can set you up with a doctor to provide potential prescriptions if necessary. All of this is completely customized to your specific needs from your lab results. So go to marekhealth.com/Zach Tellender and use code Tellender at checkout to receive 10% off of a checkup panel or a lab panel.
So, dude, what are the top 10 exercises to gain muscle strength? Muscle strength. Because that question's never been asked before. Yeah. Oh, man. Can you imagine if like we were just chilling, having a great conversation, and then I start this and I just become a machine and just
hammering it with like every viral clip possible.
like testosterone, anything about like, what's TRT?
Define it.
Yeah. What is test?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, shit, man. How are you? You just did Rogan.
Yeah. And I also am on 1 hour sleep, so hopefully I come across as relatively coherent right now. But
yeah, you're pretty fine.
I'm still getting collected from waking up about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah, just shotgun 2 or 3 of those and you'll be good to go. What... I don't want to say like what's Rogan like. I've actually met the dude a few times.
Oh yeah? What was that like?
It was cool. Like it was at his club and I was with Chris and we went up to the green room, shook his hand. We talked a little bit. I asked him a few questions, but it's like, he sees so many people in a situation like that he just like doesn't have time to care about someone like me until I'm there over and over and over again. But now you know each other well enough on your 3rd time going on a show. I imagine it's like very loose now. Not very loose, but like...
Yeah, it's funny though, because he's no different. He's right when he meets you, he's on it. And super, super laid back and chill. And he's obviously met enough big names at this point to where it's like nothing phases him. Seemingly, I don't know, or he's just really good at...
Well, he was about to go on stage. So it was like he was a little bit more on edge when I met him.
Oh yeah,
for obvious reasons, Like I shouldn't have even been in that room, to be fair, but we were there. And Ron White was in there. Ron White gave me a glass of his tequila. He's like, "Zach, you like tequila?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "Let me make you one." I'm like, "I'm getting served a glass of tequila from Ron fucking White, man." It was cool.
I wonder if like comedians, when they get on stage, obviously it's a nerve-wracking thing that they probably have exposure over time that starts to become less and less nerve-wracking. If that just translates to everything else is not nerve-wracking because you do this on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's gotta be, man. But I know people who can't podcast, people who can't sit and start talking.
Yeah.
Dude, this is what Chris has said to me. He's like, what I do is it's not, it's not easy, but when I see you just sit in front of a camera and start talking, I'm like, that is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I always have someone to push off of back and forth, and you don't. Like, I never want to do that. So yeah, so like what he's done in just videos by himself, he's done like, what I learned when I went sober for 1,000 days, or I don't know if you've seen that video or something like that, where he does speak in front of the camera, and he's like, he dreads those.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I feel like as much as, I don't know, it might not be an attractive way to make videos, it's also like the most scalable because you don't rely on a guest. So hopefully that serves me well long term. But yeah, sometimes it is weird when you sit down and you just have to talk to yourself almost. Like,
dude, it's super weird, especially if you know you're going to send it to an editor.
Yeah, I remember.
You're like,
oh, dude, my rough videos before they're edited are pretty funny.
Dude, I mean, I saw them when we did Liver King Live.
Yeah.
You're like, da 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 da. You kept saying the same line over and over because I do the same thing, and like what's funny is like at first, like, that's super embarrassing, because you just run the same line over and over again, and you like fix your hair, you like tweak, you do it again, you fix your hair, you do it again. But when I was watching it, I was like, that's fine. But there was one time, dude, you were reading the email to me, and my face. Do you remember that? I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah, I remember when I first brought it up. You were like, "Holy shit!"
It wasn't. Yeah, but dude, when you brought it up, I was like, "Whoa, dude, that's crazy." Yeah. But I remember in the Zoom session,
when I shared
shared the screen.
Yeah.
And it was the GH part.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yo." Pause for a fucking second right now. This is crazy, dude.
Yeah.
That was wild, dude. What a wild thing. And it like, dude, the production of that, we're going to look back on that like whole production and be like, God, that was so fun. That was so cool.
That's probably like the most intensive video I have on my channel, I think, in terms of production value and all that went into it.
Oh, dude. The whole thing was scripted.
Yeah.
You've never done that.
Yeah, it's totally new territory. So I think it was couldn't have gone better though. It was like exactly an hour too. It looked pretty sick.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It was that was a trip.
Do you follow his stuff? Really?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't think he's really like fallen off since.
Well, I've heard from Mark Bell that he like runs desiccated organ wholesaling in America. So if you have desiccated organs in your supplements that you sell and you have nothing to do with any of his supplement brands, it's likely coming through him. Like if you want to source desiccated organs, it's likely coming through him. So that's another thing where he's making money.
Hey, I wonder how many brands he has associated with them, because it's like I'm aware of Ancestral and then Heart and Soil, but I don't. And then there was some other one, The Fittest, which had his bar and stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, like not even associated, just getting the shit.
Yeah, like sourcing it. If you wanted to private label your own beef liver product or whatever, presumably it would maybe touch his hands.
So that's the thing, man. It's like we're thinking of it on a small level. We're thinking like, oh, his market has ruined all of this. Like, dude, there is no market. I am the market. We're just fucking hilarious to think about, right? Like, anyone who's like, yeah, the Liver King's over. It's like, dude, it didn't matter if he was there or not. He's the Don of this whole situation, man. You've admittedly done some stupid cycles of a bunch of different compounds, obviously testosterone, human growth hormone, all of that. Do you regret doing those?
As of now, given that I have at least no perceived permanent, like obviously you could absolutely argue there's some level of deterioration that is maybe not super perceptible to me just on the surface of my blood work and diagnostics, but I don't know, man. It's like whenever you get into the questions of if you could go back in time, would you change X? And then it's like, well, would I be here in this situation the same way? Would I have gone down the rabbit hole of figuring out, I don't know, how to stop hair loss, and then making videos about it, and then educating about it, and having a lot of people be able to fix their situation because of it. Like, there's so many things that come as a result that I couldn't say I regret that, because now it's like I have no idea if I'd end up where I am. So I would say no. Just
right. Yeah. And I figured that as much.
Yeah. But the answer is not no, because I got super fucking jacked, and like I'm stoked that I got super fucking jacked. It was more like
it's more of where you're at right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just doing a comfortable TRT dose. You feel And
as I get older though, and I started to learn more, I started to realize that like I might be able to actually like get off if I wanted to. I thought I was going to be like stuck on TRT for life because of what I did. And, there's probably a way to transition to just 8CG only, and then maybe try and transition off. And that will be something probably in the future that I explore. But, there's like a lot of shit that you don't get taught when you're first getting into this. And you're just, like obviously it's more readily available, the information now. But back when I started, it was, there's a lot of stuff I wish I didn't do in hindsight, but it also got me to the point I am now.
Yeah, your tone across, like, this is what made your channel, essentially, was your cautionary tone of all of this. Yeah. And like you really, you made it so like, here's this stigmatized thing. Like, here's why it shouldn't be necessarily stigmatized, but here's why also like the dangers need to be perceived, and they need to be perceived like regularly. Not by some fucking gym class teacher who's doing health. And like, dude, I learned about steroids from DARE.
Yeah.
Do you remember DARE? You guys probably didn't have DARE in Canada, did you?
Yeah, we had DARE.
Okay. So DARE was a failed drug program. And they did do a steroid section. I don't know if you remember that.
Is the Ben Affleck video the DARE thing? Or is that an actual movie? I forget. Yeah, so the Ben Affleck thing, it's like, I don't know if it was like some promotional campaign for anti-steroid use or it was an actual movie, but basically he was playing a character, and this was a long time ago. This is like the 90s, I think.
Oh my God, I gotta get this clip.
Yeah, I've been meaning to react to it. It's just on my endless list of shit to do that I never do. But he took, an array of different things, and by the end of the movie / promotional thing or whatever, he was like fucking chucking shit around his room and just roid raging like crazy. And I think it was his girlfriend. He like fucking tossed her to the floor or something. Yeah, it was like the most extreme version of.
The only reason I'm laughing is because I'm picturing like this 90s like reenactment, because like all these PSAs were so dog shit,
Yeah.
And like.
No, yeah, that was like.
Like, don't do steroids, and then it's like Ben Affleck throwing his girlfriend on the ground.
Yeah. No, it is funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I learned through DARE, and it's like, dude, that was ridiculous. Like, what it does is it removes steroids from everyone.
Yeah.
To make it this crazy thing, right? And then you find out when a lot of people are doing it, you're like, wait, is it that crazy? Like, what do we know about it? Well, we don't know anything. The only thing we do know is from some fucking dude named Jose at your rec center, who's repping out, 135 dumbbells on the incline.
I don't think anyone's ever going to have the real answer as to if it's good that there's more readily available information about it either. Because it's like, there will always be the two-sided, discussion of, well, they put out misinformation and hit it and scared the shit out of us, but a lot less people were doing it. Granted, it wasn't as readily accessible back then, too, and it was harder to actually procure the shit to use it. But nowadays, it's like, there's people educating how to not fuck yourself up. Does that then enable you to be like, okay, like if I want to do it, I feel a bit better about...
Yeah, I've assessed the risk. I've done the research. I think I want to get on trend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, well, just because you research something doesn't mean it like, the risk, or like... You haven't felt the risks.
Yeah, and like obviously it's not comparable for like a teenager to compare to an Olympic athlete, but we've seen the Olympic athletes say they would literally take years off their life for a goal, take whatever drugs they had to do. For guys who want to improve their life, if they think that this is the key to do it, they will also take years off their life and be willing to take that sacrifice if it means I get chicks, I get admiration from dudes, I get, you know, praise, I could become the next Sam Sulik, whatever.
Yeah, it's the old the man in the bar allegory that I love so much. You know, let's say there's like a 19-year-old kid and he goes up to a 30-year-old dude. He's like, "Hey, do you ever go out and drink? Like my buddies are drinking. Should I drink and party at night?" And the guy's like, "You know, you should do it, but just be aware of the risks." He's like, "Oh, have you drank recently?" He's like, "Actually, I did past weekend. And man, I'm a little bit hungover and my sleep schedule's all messed up. But, you know, I went to the bar and I banged a 10. And, but yeah, you got to understand the risks." And the kid just goes, "Oh, I think I understand the risk and I think I'm going to drink.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go to that bar. You know, I understand those risks now. I did some research and thank you for letting me know those risks, but I think I'm going to take that risk and I'm going to go to the bar." Yeah, because all he heard was I banged a 10.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the equivalent. If The Rock was like, "Look, guys, you know, I'm currently doing TRT. Every once in a while, I'll blast on some good shit to get ready for a movie role. But, you know, this stuff, you got to be very careful when you take this. You got to understand the risks. I wouldn't do it." Shit like that.
That sounds about exactly what I'd expect his come out video or...
He wouldn't admit to blasting, though.
No, but I mean, if he was actually to, which he's never going to, but if he was to say it on a podcast,
in that voice too,
I feel like that's exactly what he would say.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, some iteration of that that's more professional, but like...
And then he'd go straight into "buy my tequila."
Yeah.
You know? As you take a sip of Gorilla Mind, you fucking shill.
What's with like every celebrity and having alcohol? It's like, do they all like tequila or is it just like a high margin product or...
I don't know. It's trend. It's just trends. But, dude, we got to talk about this. Alcohol's kind of crazy. Okay. I saw an ad, like every once in a while, I'll be like with my parents or at a bar or something, and I'll watch actual TV. Mm-hmm. So like I'll get actual people commercials, which is something that like people like us don't get because we're watching YouTube all the time.
And it's funny how they're actually interesting now because you don't see them ever. So
yeah, I'm like,
what's on TV now?
Yeah. So there's this one. It was during a football game, and it was a Crown Royal commercial. Okay. Crown Royal or Royal Crown? Yeah, Crown Royal. Crown Royal. And it was like, when you're watching the game, like nothing hits better than a Crown Royal. And you're like, "Oh, okay, it's an alcohol commercial." And you're like, "Wait a minute, didn't this game start at 11 a.m. on a Sunday? These dudes are pouring neat glasses." No, they're due on the rocks with Crown Royal, and they're just boozing whiskey. Is it whiskey or bourbon or something like that? They're just boozing brown liquor at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. Like, this is what we're promoting in America. We got The Rock being like, "Yo, your health and fitness is important, but get shit-faced off of Terramina," or whatever the fuck, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, no. Well, it's like, if you want to get granular on everything, it's like, well, doesn't he have like a fucking pancake company too? And it's just like, this is my cheat meal, and here's the shitty food that I eat when I want to be unhealthy. Like, go buy it. Like, you could scrutinize everything.
I know.
To hell,
I think alcohol is it's just crazy how regularized.
It's just like literal poison. Yeah.
Yeah, and being in a city too with a bunch of young people, it's like drinks every day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, drinks every day if you want to have like a social life. But I'm obviously like I find it to be painful. Like, the last thing I want is alcohol, you know, in given scenarios, because like,
when's the last time you drank?
2 weekends ago.
Okay.
But I'm saying like let's say on a Sunday, I went out, had a few drinks on Saturday. On a Sunday, like, the last thing I am thinking about is alcohol. In fact, like, you would have to pay me to drink alcohol, because like, I want water, I want sustenance, I want coffee, I want like drinks that make me feel good. You know, not another beer, you know. But like, that's the way it is in a lot of cities. It's like, it's just
I don't know if it's my primitive, immature palate, but I don't find alcohol tasty whatsoever. So it's like, it's always, struck me as odd when people are like, oh, I would love to have a scotch on the rocks. I'm like, dude, like, how about like some fucking juice or something?
Yeah, how about a Diet Coke?
Yeah.
You ever tried Diet Coke?
Yeah. So I just can't fathom how people like the taste of like fucking rubbing alcohol, essentially.
So, okay, we went on a little tangent, but that original question was if you regretted, taking stupid things, doing stupid things as far as drug use goes. And essentially it's no, because you were able to then create the way that you talked in your channel and like the person that you are today because of that, which is a completely valid response and an understandable one, and something that I would agree with if that was my situation as well. What were some of those stacks? Like, what was your mindset trying to get jacked? Were you like, you'd get one source of information from some random dude and be like, oh yeah, I like this guy. He's cool. He seems smart and I love his physique. So like, yeah, I'll hop on this, and this. How did that go for you? Like specifically?
It's like the same way you assimilate and consolidate information now is kind of exactly how I did it back then too, just with lesser resources. So it's like what is available to actually digest and kind of create a framework. We have online forums. We have jack guys at the gym. We have your friend who took some shit one time and thinks he knows what he's talking about and he heard how to take it. You have the guy selling you shit. These are the people that are giving you advice essentially. And the most impactful advice was typically coming from forum bros, because they're like guys who actually are very serious about competing at a high level sometimes and have used...
Like foreign, like European?
What's that?
What did you say?
Forum.
Forum.
Like online.
Gotcha. Forum bros. Yes.
Discussion
okay. Bodybuilding.com.
Yeah. Like there are a lot of...
What were the forums specifically? It was...
there's a bunch. Like I think Outlaw Muscle, Professional Muscle, Hardcore something.
Wow.
There's like a lot that are shut down now as well.
Yeah, because it's not a really big medium, but back then it was, right?
Yeah. It was kind of like people still participate on them as far as I know, but they're not as I don't know, concentrated of people trying to learn as they once were, because it was, as stuff gets diluted over time, people are watching YouTube now. People are buying, I don't know, even programs of how to do shit behind paywalls from their favorite creator who they trust. Like that stuff exists that didn't really exist back in the day too. There's like courses people take to educate themselves. So what year was this? Like what was the prime year of doing stupid shit? I think
like not year specific, but like what age were you?
Probably like 20. Like the stupidest stuff I did was when I was like 21, probably, because it wasn't necessarily peak dosage, but it was more like peak not knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and
with
so like,
what I was using.
What was that process at 21 years old?
Oh, it was like, take 500 tests and then, an AI with it and, hope it goes well, essentially. And then also add D-ball on top because you got to kickstart your cycle, of course, with like D-ball for the first 4 weeks because the test hasn't kicked in yet, and you don't want to leave gains on the table for weeks that you're exposing yourself to drugs. So you front load with D-ball to get gains like off the bat, which is actually just like flooding yourself with water essentially. So, do that, and then you're coupling two things that convert heavily to estrogen on top of each other. And I think that was probably like the only time I've ever had noticeable almost gyno develop. Like if I actually went and got an assessment, I'm sure I would have some level of glandular mass under my nipples from that specifically. Because I remember being in the gym parking lot and going to like put my seatbelt on, and it's never been more uncomfortable to have a seatbelt hitting my fucking nip.
So I love the verbiage that you use, like kind of satirically, like, well, obviously you got to do D-ball to like kickstart, because like, dude, it takes 4 weeks for the SIP to come in. So like, I just take a little bit of D-ball. Like you obviously heard that from some dude.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, this guy's so fucking sure of himself and so smart.
Yeah.
Like, why? Yeah. What? I imagine it didn't even come into your brain like I should question this guy.
No, it's like when your dick isn't working, it's like, what am I doing wrong? Not what's wrong with the framework of, the cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. That's a huge side effect, right?
Oh, dude, I've had like at my worst in terms of side effects, I would literally have a chick ready to have sex with me and I was on like 40 milligrams of Cialis and couldn't get hard.
Yeah. And yeah, would you, fuck.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah. I remember
the trade-off. Like what?
I remember
that is okay. If that is not like playing God, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or the, the devil comes up and he's like, bro, you want to get jacked? And you're like, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I've always wanted to.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, I got you. And then you're like, whoa, dude, I'm fucking massive. I'm jacked. And then, holy shit, all these girls are paying attention to me and I get to bang girls because that's why I started.
Yeah.
You get them in bed and your dick doesn't work. Yeah. That's the trade-off that you have with the devil. That is insane.
Yeah. A lot of people do use rec drugs too that fuck their dick function, which has always seemed wild to me. But I guess
like what, like MDMA and stuff like that. Yeah,
yeah. It's like almost what is the point at that other than to fucking? I've never actually done MDMA, but trip balls while in a music festival or something.
It's so interesting that you like.
People so naive to certain drugs.
No, not you. I mean, yeah, you're pretty green when it comes to like partying. Like your first concert was a month ago.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The Killers at the F1 thing.
Yeah,
yeah. But like, it's funny that people drink so they can be social. People are more social so that they can meet people. Can meet a partner, someone that they can end up having sex with,
and then you get whiskey dick.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's the same thing with your fucking D-ball test cycle. You got to kickstart with dude. That's so funny. I can't wait to like use that in my impressions vernacular.
Dude, test deca D-ball is like the Michelin Man stack and a dick not functioning stack at the same time.
It really is. Like if you're like, hey, I want to look like the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
And I also don't want my dick to work. And you're like, buddy, have I got the stack for you?
Yeah, exactly. But you will gain lots of size. So
what other sort of things like that? Like you got to take D-ball, what other sort of like you have to do these things were like known in the bodybuilding world?
Probably one of the stupidest ones was how you would come off the drugs. It would be you stop taking them and then you wait 2 weeks for them to work their way out of your system. And then you start a post-cycle therapy regimen of 2 like breast cancer drugs, essentially. One's a breast cancer drug and one is like a fertility drug. But the way it was framed out, there was like this set in stone cookie cutter way to do the post-cycle therapy. Mm-hmm. And it just was the same dose, regardless of how big or small of a human you were, regardless of your genetic response.
Or blood work.
Yeah.
Why would you get blood work?
And regardless of what compounds you were working out of your system, because a lot of people didn't, like this shows how far people have come too, is back then we didn't even look at, it's called pharmacokinetics. It's like how drugs essentially are metabolized out of your body or like how your body handles them. And back then we were just of the impression that 2 weeks after is when it's gone and you can start the therapy. But if you actually look at the pharmacokinetics of like testosterone enanthate or cypionate or nandrolone decanoate or boldenone, like EQ, especially that one has like a 15-day half-life, I think, which means it takes 15 days for half of it to work its way out of your system. Mm-hmm. So to think that in 2 weeks, it's out of my system and it's now time to take PCT drugs, it's like the reality is there's still a fuck ton in your system. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are starting their PCTs and actually finishing the PCT while steroids were still in their system. And this is actually what even pro bodybuilders, some of them still do this shit. They think they're taking time off.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, dude, you just had to like, and they'll even come on camera and be like, yeah, man, like I'm on nothing right now. And like, I take, this many weeks off every year and I make sure for health and I don't lose any size because I keep my training and my diet dial. It's like, no, you still have drugs in your system. That's why you haven't lost size.
Yeah. So, what I love about it is just the sure, like these guys are all so sure of it.
Yeah.
They're like,
but it's like, why would you think otherwise?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like your coach told you, some super knowledgeable pro who's like
And the way they talk about it too is very calm. Like,
yeah, there are certain people who
take 2 weeks off, and then we'll get you on Arimidex, Novadex. And
there are certain people that speak so confidently they could convince you of things that are completely wrong. Like, for example, Gary Brecka was on Rogan the other day, and the guy is he's very intelligent, and he has great information, by the way. I'm not like shitting on him, but some of the stuff he says is actually like factually incorrect, but he says it with such a straight face, and the delivery is so intense. And it's smooth. It sounds like this guy has recited it like 1,000 times and knows it like inside out. And he will just say it as if, like, I almost think he must believe it. Like, I don't think he could be that deluded to say it in the way he does that confidently without truly believing in himself. And I could be wrong. He's a great actor. But, like, for example, I don't know if you know what T4 is. It's like thyroid hormone. And it has to convert in the body to T3.
And if there's an imbalance there, it's hypo or hyper. And
yeah, so he was like talking about his whole thing is like methylation and how you need his like gene test to assess, you know, what predispositions you have, which is highly exaggerated. But he's like 80, I forget what percentage. He said like 80 or 90% of T4 is methylated in the gut to T3. And I'm like that's so not even close to how it works. Like, it is not methylated. It's converted through an enzymatic pathway that is not in the gut either. And it's just like, how did you even come up with that?
Yeah, dude, this is and I don't know anything about Gary Brecka, so I'm not going to call him a charlatan, but it's the
dude, he's
refusal.
Like,
yeah, I know. Look, man, we can dive into that with a little bit more research. I just got to watch more of this dude,
sure.
I guess. But, one of the things that you have to look out with when it comes to charlatans is the lack of disclaimers and that assured, like that just being very assured in what you're saying. It's like, so you and I, dude, this is just how we naturally will end up speaking. I'm a little bit more loose now, but like on my YouTube videos, when I write captions on Instagram, a lot of different things, it's like I'm never saying anything absolute, as I just said, never.
Yeah.
You know, but I really try and be like, not so sure about what I'm saying. Because you can only run into problems later on when you realize, oh shit, I was actually wrong. And then a lot of these guys, they'll never actually do that part. They'll never actually say, oh shit, I was wrong, because they've built up way too much behind that wrong thing they said. So they'll just ignore it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know what this Gary Brecka guy said or anything about him, but the lack of just using a disclaimer at all is a scary sign.
Yeah, I don't want to speak like too poorly out of turn without knowing the guy or having watched like all of his content comprehensively, but it's like, I don't know. Like, I can't help but think he must believe that is what it is, because at least if I was unsure of something, I try to have a preface of like, this is, I believe X, or I'm of the opinion of X, or, you know, my understanding is that it's probably, and I have like some sort of framework of my sentence structure that makes it, you know, quite clear that I'm not confident in my answer, or I should fact check it, or you should fact check it as the viewer, or whatever. Just like off the top of my head, this is what I think it is. But he'll just like straight up fucking look Joe Rogan in the eye and be like, bro, like, this is it. You need my, like, these methylated B vitamins and this and that.
Was he also the 86-hour fast guy?
I
think what's his name? Dana White was talking about it. He was doing it. Did you see the Balco documentary series on Netflix?
Dude, I've seen so many series on Balco, so I couldn't.
Okay,
is it really new?
Kind of new within the last year. I mean,
What's it
maybe
called?
Last 3 months, 4 months. I forget what it's called, but it's, you know, Victor Conti.
Yeah,
like, heavy.
I'm pretty familiar with the whole, you know, Balco scandal.
Yeah, and Jeff Nowitzki and all of those major players in it. There was a really interesting part where, you know, to this day, Victor Conti's like, I never helped Barry Bonds with steroids. I never helped him with it. And he's willing to just talk openly about Tim Montgomery. Tim Montgomery was the big one.
Yeah.
That one was crazy. Okay. His relationship with Tim Montgomery. Tim Montgomery raced in Worlds with a ZMA logo. Okay. That's That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. But the dude behind the camera, you know, the director, he hands him a copy of a calendar, because these guys give out a calendar. When should you take your drugs? What should the doses be? And he says, "Is that your handwriting?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think he says, no, that doesn't look like my handwriting." And when you compare it to his other handwriting that he admits to, it's identical. And it says BB cycle on it or something like that.
Okay.
And it's just it's just a calendar. It's like when you should take, and it says, you know, the cream, the clear, all of these things. My question is, what do you know what the cream was and what the clear was? What those drugs were?
Yeah, so THG was one of them. It was tetrahydrogestrinone, I believe. I would have to fact check the chemical name, but it was basically like a nandrolone derivative.
Yeah, and the guy made it off of birth control.
Yeah.
Dude, when you told me that first, that birth control is like a nandrolone like derivative or something like that, or analog, or
there's a ton of different progestins that are used in birth control, but many of them derive from nandrolone as like the parent, and they will just like tweak and manipulate it accordingly.
And like we just put girls on it, like that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
For decades.
Yeah, and keep them and fuck up their blood work and fuck up their libidos and quality of life, and some people benefit from it though. It's use case specific, but that's definitely an area of.
But they're not handing it out with the use case specific.
No, there's not enough education behind the prescriptions typically, especially at the ages when it's like a girl who's 16 who's just like, I don't want to get pregnant. Well, take whatever the doctor suggests, obviously. So that's the drug that was they called the clear. Right, because it hadn't even been made yet. It was essentially a designer drug at that point. There was 2 drugs that were used because one of them, I believe, had scrutiny coming down on it, or like I forget the exact reason, but they anticipated scrutiny or something. So I
think the cream was estrogen. Something had to do with estrogen.
Yeah, I would have to.
It was just cream and clear.
Yeah, like basically the thing to know is there was 2 anabolic steroids created that were synthetic designer drugs, and every steroid is derived from a parent compound of testosterone, and even to get to 19 nortestosterone, like you still have to tweak the testosterone to get there. So everything ultimately derives from, you know, the same place, and you end up with something more anabolic or less anabolic or more androgenic or less or not effective at all, or it hits other receptors entirely, and it's just this process of, like, it seemed like for them it was tweaking. I think one of them was a drug candidate that was abandoned in like a pharmaceutical pipeline, and then they also tweaked and modified another to get the THG one, I believe. So either way, though, it was designer drugs that were not, you know, on the banned substance list, right, and had a, you know, reference standard they were looking for in urine analysis and whatnot.
So what I'm wondering is, like, can that happen every week? Can someone come up with a new derivative or whatever you want to call it, like analog or something, and then just use that because it's not on, like, is that how it works? Like, is there like, my thing is, like, if they can detect this, how do you know they won't be able to detect this thing that's not out yet? Do you just have to try it and figure it out?
Yeah, it's they claim that anything that is deriving from the parent,
of course,
that they could detect it, but
oh really?
Yeah, but my understanding as of, and it probably depends on the testing organization how scrutinous or it is, because some of them are specifically looking for a targeted list of different compounds, and if you don't have this exact list, then you will get passed regardless.
Yeah, so okay, so this is where testing comes into play. This is why, like, the Rodchenkov thing was so interesting, because he was the leader of USADA. So he had access to the testing. He had access to not just Russian testing facilities that would catch dopers, but the WADA doping facilities. So he knew what would pop and what wouldn't. And so I imagine if you pair that with designer drugs, then you're good to go.
Yeah, like, ultimately being able to dope, a lot of it is access, and also access to diagnostics to assess where you stand. So it is you know, like WADA accredited labs being able to use their tests on yourself in order to assess if you're going to pop for fill in the blank. That is kind of one of the main ways people are kind of like foolproofing the process more, because it would be very risky to just go into it without knowing what to be cautious of or what tests are being subject to or what have you. So people will have like their own biological passport they keep of themselves, essentially. So it's like not, you know, it's not given to the governing bodies that oversee the sport they're in. It's like they have their own data and they're like tracking their own shit.
Yeah. People are, I mean, dude, they'll do anything to win.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like not as hard. Like some of the WADA accredited labs have, you know, corrupt people working in them. So you could like fucking tip them off and get them to take a sample and they will test it for you. Like there's stuff people will do to finagle the system to get access to even the diagnostics that another competitor wouldn't.
Do you know much about this UFC thing with USADA?
Yeah, so USADA is getting phased out January 1, as far as I know. And
why?
Basically, I don't think I could sum it up basically because I don't know enough in depth behind the scenes what went on, but they
like speculating why.
Yeah, like I know that the UFC, like Dana Nowitzki, they've been pretty outspoken about what they didn't like about USADA, and they've done press conferences where they talked for hours about it, and it was a lot of different things, but you know, they would be preventing fighters from, I don't know, like they would show up in the middle of the night when they're fucking sleeping, and it would cause like you know, it was like problematic close to competitions when they were like really depleted and they would show up in the middle of the night kind of thing to test them, almost to the point of it being nearly unjustifiable ethically, I suppose.
Oh, I've heard some stories, man.
Yeah, and I don't know, just like a whole bunch of stuff. Like they threw Conor McGregor under the bus, I think, a couple times publicly in media, and UFC, like Dana, didn't like it, and I would be speaking out of turn if I tried to summarize all of the points of.
So it's just a battle that's been occurring for a long time.
I don't think it had anything to do with their like lack of rigor though on testing. It was more like how they handle business and their what they speak about publicly, and just overall being unhappy with that organization, like Dana.
So the thing that like this is going to be an unpopular take. When you start getting really loud about the shittiness of a company, like a lot of times what I just naturally end up doing is positioning myself on the other side, just to like kind of think about it.
Yeah.
If we look at the whole like Lance Armstrong scandal, you know, he did cheat. Like he was caught red-handed. But in that process for like years, he was very loud about his disdain for WADA, his disdain for all of these different agencies. And regardless of how piss poor their practices were, whether, you know, the corruption, all of these things, like he was very loud about it and unafraid.
Yeah.
And he ended up being lying the entire fucking time. And to think that it's impossible that Conor McGregor is just being super loud, you know, I'm drawing a comparison here. I'm just postulating, okay? This is just the opposite side. I understand how both sides are positioned, but do you see what I'm saying? Like the squeaky wheel will gets the grease.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a travesty, by the way, that he had his titles rescinded.
Who?
Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong.
Yeah.
Man, it's like it's just it's a statement from people. They want to, like, you know, but at the same time, dude, that he bullied a lot of people back, you know, for a long period of time. But you know, these people, these athletes, while they want to win, when they're in that mindset, they're not regular people. They'll do anything it takes.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, you're pretty entrenched in the CrossFit world now, eh? What's your impression of the drug use, bro?
Man, you know,
because I'm sure going into it, you're probably like, they're all fucking taking shit.
Yeah, well,
they're not gonna say it, and now you're like, you know, and are chummy with many of the top people.
Oh, they would. I mean, no one would ever. It's no one talks about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one in CrossFit talks about steroid use. And that's all the way across. Like creators, coaches, athletes, sponsors, none of them. Mm-hmm. Which is odd because like in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, it is like it's not even a conversation anymore. You know, you hit certain numbers, you're on drugs.
Yeah.
Or you're from certain countries, you're on drugs.
I guess it's harder to quantify where the threshold of unnatural is in a sport that's basically like multiple different.
And they change the events all the time.
Yeah. Because you could argue like, oh, well, how do you know this is not just, you know, my special endurance training or whatever? It's not like there's a very specific like force production related PR when it comes to like running and jumping and like kipping or whatever the fuck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think there are natural athletes in that pool. Just like I do think there's plenty of natural Olympic athletes. Everyone wants to say that every Olympian is on drugs all the time. It's like, I think what drugs do is they really separate you at the top.
Have you seen the Enhanced Games?
No.
It's so this new organization created called the Enhanced Games, and they're basically trying to compete with the Olympics. And it's like Olympics on steroids. So
I mean, it's not like Olympics. It is.
It is. They hold all the same events.
But you know that you know the way of that manner of speaking where you're like, it's like this on steroids.
Yeah.
And you just said it,
but it's literally.
Yeah.
So they're, you know, obviously there's a lot of corruption behind the scenes. I'm sure you've covered it at length, and certain people that have, you know, disdain for the system and also, or people that have been popped before, are entering to compete in this untested federation, I guess, that is going to be, you know, essentially this is what can actually happen when you push, you know, human biology to the limit. And yeah, they're trying to get like mainstream coverage. They're trying to go big. They want to, you know, put the event on right when the Olympics are happening. And supposedly they have a significant amount of investment behind it and are going to get mainstream media coverage.
I'm dubious.
Yeah, I'm obviously skeptical that they would get on mainstream media, but or that it even happens to begin with. But it's interesting enough to be like watching and seeing if it happens.
Dude, the Enhanced Games. You're not going to get the best athletes, so people aren't going to be in.
Well, one of the things they're doing to differentiate themselves too is they're having like very, very significant cash prizes for if you win or break world records. So they're trying to monetize the process for athletes, whereas in the Olympics, you're just blessed to be an athlete there and you can't do shit for monetization.
Yeah.
So rather than the Olympics, you know, like milking the shit out of these athletes, this organization is going to be where you could actually make money for breaking a world record rather than having to, you know, finagle some, you know, sponsorship afterwards or whatever. Because like, a lot of Olympic athletes have been like really fucked out of what they could have made.
So when I think about drug use, I think of like insanely good athletes. Insanely good athletes that are natural for a long time. And then kind of like late stage in their career, they start going on drugs and like they get better when they shouldn't be. Like they improve on times, like, and that's just something that just doesn't happen. Or like if I was to use Barry Bonds as an example, I think in this Balco thing, it was like people basically, Barry Bonds saw Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and he was like, what the fuck? Like I can do that.
Yeah.
And then he did drugs and he did that better than both of them. So Barry Bonds, incredible baseball player, natural, incredible, probably Hall of Fame, right? And he was like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah.
These guys get to hit home runs and like, let me do that. And he did. He called his shot and he did it. And he was like getting better as he was getting older.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pitchers. You're like, hey man, aren't you 40? You know, you're doing a little bit too good. There's some basketball players that were getting better in the late stages of their careers. And you're like, that's where it starts to get really weird, right? Yeah. You're like 38, 39, 40 years old and you're doing numbers that you never did before.
Yeah.
You know, and you were doing really good numbers naturally. I believe that at that time, many of those athletes were natural and they're just literally genetic freaks that like take over the sport. But as they get older, it's like, well, wait a minute. There's still some here. There's still some juice to be squeezed or added, if you will.
Yeah.
And if you look at weightlifting as an Olympic sport, what these systems were doing was they weren't even allowing a natural puberty to happen. Mm-hmm. They were hopping on as puberty was occurring.
That is your puberty.
Yeah, well, we're adding into that.
Yeah, we're going to push you through it ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is crazy. Yeah. Right? And I think when people are like, just legalize all steroids, they don't think about that because they don't really know. And I bring this up all the time. Like, girls, 12 years old, boys, 12 to 15, steroids. Like, when we think about how controversial hormone use is, and just like, you know, recreational hormone use, when people are like, oh, you know, Sam Sulek is too young to start, like, these countries, they're like, oh, that's cute. You think 20 years old is too young? Yeah. You know? And I wonder, the enhanced games, if we can get kind of results that are close to those results, or it seems very weird to me. Like, what's the line, you know?
Yeah, like, I imagine at the start, a lot of the athletes that are at the actual Olympics, naturally, because they're the pinnacle of their category of whatever they're competing in, will probably be better than a lot of people juiced to the fucking tits. Like, it's so I don't necessarily know that there's gonna be like easy world record shattering performances happening in the enhanced games either. So it kind of depends how much, I don't know, money earning potential off the front end really like drives the awareness, and also, you know, how much of a flop or not is the first event, you know, to be determined. But, you know, they definitely have to like have a couple people break some world records to get some real attention, I think.
Yeah. What you been interested in lately?
Mostly consumed by business, dude, honestly. So
yeah, 3 businesses.
Yeah. I guess if you count my channel, it's like a 4th, sort of. But
because if you have to do advertisements for it, like, essentially it's a business in its own, right?
Yeah. And just like the amount of time allocation to it, like, it's easily one of the most time consuming of the businesses.